The Nintendo Switch has become my forever system. What do I mean by that? I have a couple of forever systems. Systems that I will just continue to go back to over and over and over again for the rest of my life or for as long as my hardware last survives and the software still works. I am currently collecting for the Nintendo Wii. I'm currently collecting for the PS3, and there is a good chance that PS3 games eventually will be unplayable, that something will happen to all of the Blu-ray discs, or my hardware will eventually, the disc won't read anymore, or there'll be something catastrophically wrong with the console and I won't be able to play anymore. Now, chances are I'll be able to buy another used console and get another few years, but there will come a time, whether that's 10 years in the future or 20 or 30 years in the future, where it's just not going to be viable to play these games. And the same thing will happen to the Nintendo Switch eventually. We'll start to see problems with the internal batteries, for example, swelling up and exploding, and people are going to have to try and get inside the console and change those batteries, which is certainly not something your average Joe can do by themselves. I'm sure if you have a little bit of technical know-how, soldering and electronics and things like that, you can probably do it. And there are going to be repair shops that can do that for you. But there will come a time when the Nintendo Switch hardware will mostly not be working either. Will that be 20 years in the future? Who knows? I think it'll have a shorter lifespan than something like the Nintendo Wii, because of having all those components built into the same console, the controllers, the screen, the speakers, everything all built into one console. Although we have seen that with Nintendo's handheld consoles, like the DS, the 3DS, the Game Boy Advance, etc., and a lot of those are still working and functioning as intended. So let's hope, cross your fingers and hope that we have a long, long, long future with the Nintendo Switch. But here's why the Nintendo Switch for me is a forever system. There is a huge library of fantastic games on the Nintendo Switch. I have currently about 120 physical games and maybe somewhere between 50 and 100 digital games on the Switch platform. I've barely played half of them at this point because I just keep finding incredible games that I want to play. I just picked up Astral Chain a week or so ago and started playing that. That game is incredible. Absolutely innovative, incredible game that you can't play anywhere else. It is exclusive to the console. It's not on PC. It's nowhere. It's Astral Chain. It's a Nintendo property. So, you look at the huge library of not only exclusives, but just stuff that maybe... You look at something like indie games, for example. Over the course of the Switch's lifespan, the Switch became the go-to place for indie game distribution. Of course, there's always been Steam, and I have a PC here, and most indie games come to Steam first before they go to Switch. But there was a time period where the Switch was the only handheld that was getting indie games. And a lot of indie games really lend themselves well to handheld play. Of course, now we have things like the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go and yada yada yada, all these different handhelds that can play Steam games. But there was a significant period of 4 or 5 years where the Switch was the only way for an indie developer to get their game on a handheld console. So there's a ton of stuff out there for you to explore and discover. Fantastic games. I couldn't even begin to go into the list, but just top of mind, something like Hollow Knight, or Hades, or Eastward, or Sea of Stars, or Chained Echoes. So many fantastic games that are best played or easiest enjoyed on the Switch. And of course, RPGs, man, JRPGs particularly. The Switch became a hotspot for JRPGs because most JRPGs are less demanding graphically and performance wise than a lot of other games, and it was easy for Japanese developers to put their games on this console, and the Switch was the most popular console in Japan for a good period of its lifespan. So that's where a lot of these Japanese developers focused their development time and money putting these games on the Switch. And we have so many fantastic franchises represented really, really well on the Switch. For example, Final Fantasy. We got the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters with 1 through 6 all on one cart. And then we have 7, 8, 9, 10 and 10 2, 12. So many Final Fantasy games represented on the Switch. And then you look at something like Persona. We have Persona 4 Golden. Got them confused. Persona 4 Golden, Persona 5 Royal, Persona 3 Portable, P3P, and then we have things like Persona Strikers and Persona Tactics. So much representation on this little console. I absolutely can't believe how many games, how many years it's going to take me to work my way through this library. Now, the Nintendo Switch 2 comes up in the conversation here because it is supposed to be backwards compatible with the Switch 1 library. However, it's not completely and entirely compatible at this point in time. They may work to patch a lot of that stuff, but who knows what's going to be compatible and what's not. If this is going to be an Xbox situation where they'll do, a certain number of games as backwards compatible titles and then just sort of abandon the rest of the library when it doesn't make sense. Who knows? We don't really know how all that's going to work out right now. But I have a Nintendo Switch OLED, and I absolutely love it, and that's docked to my TV, and I take that out and play it handheld occasionally, and then I have my Switch Lite just behind me here, which I absolutely adore for handheld play, and I don't feel like I need something else right now. I made a video a couple of days ago talking about how I'm probably not buying a Switch 2, and this video right here, is the reason why I'm not buying a Switch 2 right now, because I am so excited and grateful for what I have with the Nintendo Switch. The OG Nintendo Switch gives me so much fun and so much value for my money, not to mention the fact that most of the stuff I'm buying is physically on the cartridge, unlike a huge portion of the library of the Switch 2 at this point as we know it. So I absolutely adore this console. We have every franchise represented from Nintendo pretty much in one way or another. We have like 7 Zelda games, right? We've got Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Skyward Sword, Link's Awakening, Echoes of Wisdom, and then we've got the 2 Hyrule Warriors games and a third one. No, I think the third one's coming only to Switch 2. That's kind of a shame, but what can I say? Mario games. We've got Mario Odyssey, Mario 3D World, the Mario 3D collection with Galaxy and Sunshine and Mario 64 on it. We've got Mario Wonder. We've got spin-off games like Mario vs. Donkey Kong and all the Mario sports games now. Apparently most people don't like the Mario sports games on the Switch, but they do exist. Like, there is so much here in this library to love. I love the hardware, I love the software, and at this point, I am just so grateful to have this amazing system in my life that I can enjoy and love every single day that I can come home from a hard day of work, grab a Switch, and play something like Fire Emblem Three Houses, or a fantastic JRPG like Ni no Kuni. It's all here. PS1 remakes, SNES remakes, games like the Lunar 1 and 2 remastered trilogy, the Suikoden 1 and 2 remastered. Sorry, it's not a trilogy. What do you call that? Duology, I guess. Suikoden. I'm playing the Suikoden 1 right now. Absolutely love that game. Never got exposed to it in the PS1 era, even though I did have a PS1, so this game is absolutely brand new to me as we speak. And so many more experiences like that. Chrono Cross, for example, Legend of Mana, all these PS1 games that are getting a new lease on life. And I'm here for it. And I'm here for the next couple of years of the Nintendo Switch. Before I decide to move on, I want to squeeze every drop that I possibly can out of the lifespan of the Switch. The next couple of years, there's gonna be new games still coming to the Switch, and I want to enjoy those in the way that they were intended to be enjoyed on my Nintendo Switch. Anyways, guys, what do you think of this conversation? Are you happy with your Nintendo Switch, or are you desperate to move on to greener pastures, better graphics, better frame rates? For me, I'm happy with what I've got, and I'm so grateful to have two of these wonderful systems and like 200 games that I can choose from to play at a moment's notice. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay classy.